Well, I think the main difference between sociology and other social science disciplines is number one, it is the most broad. If you look at other social science disciplines, they tend to be focused either on particular parts of society or a more limited method for examining society. So, for example, political science really looks at politics, broadly construed, but politics. Economics will sometimes make more general claims about society, but disproportionately is concerned with economic activity, money, etc. Psychology is again focused more on the mind, the individual, and so on. Sociology essentially lays claim, perhaps in a somewhat arrogant way, to everything. You can do essentially everything in sociology, and I think that's both its strength and its weakness. You can examine any component of society that you like. I started out decades ago now as a sociologist of religion, which I think is a very, there aren't very many sociologists of religion in the world. Maybe there doesn't need to be, but I think actually it's a good way of understanding the difference between sociology and other things. There's different ways to study religion. One would be theology, which starts by presuming certain truths about things like God or the Bible means X, so on and so forth. So classic question in theology would be, what does God want us to do about X? Sociologists don't ever make claims like that. Instead, I would examine, what do ordinary religious people think God wants them to do about X? I study religious views and attitudes and behaviors in society. I don't make claims about, what is true religiously or not. The other thing I study is public reaction and how society handles innovations in medicine, science, and technology. So, for example, there's debates now about whether or not we should engage in what's called gene editing of human embryos. So in principle, it appears to be the case that you could edit the genes of a human embryo. Well, if you could do that, should we, put that in a woman and have it grow into an actual baby? There's a normative ethical question that sociologists generally don't directly answer. I'll leave that to the philosophers, the theologians, and the like. However, information about society would help incredibly to evaluating a question like that. Just to take one example, a philosopher or theologian is not going to know how many people would actually want to do this. That's a sociological question. And so I examine things like what the public would think about gene editing, would they actually want to do gene editing, under what conditions would they want to do gene editing, and so on. So, for example, if you were going to genetically modify an individual embryo, would that lead in 30 years to some sort of Brave New World scenario, or like the movie Gattaca, where people are structured by their genetic qualities towards the haves and the have-nots? Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't, predict with certain certitude about what would happen. But when I interact with ethicists and the like who are making these sorts of policy recommendations, I can say something like, the best sociological knowledge would predict that if we go down this path, in 30 years, society is going to be like X. And so you have to decide, do you want society to be like X? That's a contribution that sociology can make.